It's the Magic Untapped Podcast on magicantapped.com, YouTube, and your favorite source for podcasts. Hello, Magic players. Barry White from Magic Untapped. Time for another Magic Untapped podcast. Joining me this time around is Jim Avery, one of the writers on Magic Untapped. Jim, say hello.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Barry. I like the set that you're casting from today.
Thank you very much. Gotta love these virtual backgrounds you can do on Zoom. I finally have a good enough computer where I can actually kind of pull them off. Gotta love being able to find one of those RTX video cards. Those things are almost as rare as a PS5.
Oh, goodness, yes. You need to be in there in the first 2 seconds if you want to buy one of those.
Yeah, pretty much. And, congratulations to anyone who's able to snatch up one of those. And while we're handing out accolades, I want to go ahead and hand out a nice big thank you to our Patreon supporter, Lino Hernandez. Thank you very much for the support. And if you're listening to this and you want to go ahead and throw a buck in our tip jar and become a supporter, go ahead and head on over to patreon.com/magicantapped. Just $1 will make a difference. That was cheesy. $1 will make a difference.
I mean, it's technically true. $1 will make a big difference.
Yeah, it really. For just $1, you can help this struggling podcast. We will even send you a picture of. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to send you anything. But Wizard of the Coast is sending everybody a nice little thing today. Time Spiral Remastered just came out today, Jim. Are you excited about this release?
And I would be a lot more excited if I could play this release. But unfortunately, it's a paper set, and we're not really living in paper times.
We're not really living in paper times. Spell Table's a thing. I don't know if you've had a chance to check that out yet. So you can kind of do paper magic via webcam.
I guess that's true. I have not tried anything of that sort yet. I am living a very lonely hermit life.
A very lonely Magic the Gathering arena and online only hermit life.
Very much so.
Start calling you Uncle Istvan. But aside from that, I mean, I know you've looked at the cards. You've been curious, Jim. We have technically 2 sets coming out. We have the Time Spiral Remastered set, which are select hand-selected reprints from Time Spiral, Planar Chaos, and Future Sight. But we also have the time-shifted cards, which is taking a cue from the original time-shifted cards from the Time Spiral set, although back then they were old cards being brought back. This time they are newer cards being printed in the old frame. I think that's pretty cool. Between the two, Jim, do you have a favorite time-shifted card and a favorite non-time-shifted card in this set?
I do, in fact. If we're looking at the time-shifted cards, there's a lot of wild ones in there, but I think my favorite has got to be Itali Primal Storm. When I saw this card, I said a swear word. I was just, is this card for real, basically? It seems just, it's just so powerful. I love this. You just can grab things from your opponent's hand, and not your hand, they're a library, and just play them.
Yeah, and it's a 6/6 for 6, which is nice. It doesn't have haste, but that would be bonkers, considering all it does for 6 mana. And it was definitely one of the better of the dinosaurs from Ixalan. So I think that's a fine choice and definitely a very splashy card there. For me, if we're sticking with the Time Spiral card or the time shifted cards, I'm really big on Thoughtseize, that coming out in black border, partially because it would be nice to have the black bordered Thoughtseize to run in my legacy decks, which tend to have the older bordered older framed cards in it to begin with. But also when I pick up my box here later today, I'm really hoping to get a foil one so I can flip it on eBay and buy 2. Maybe 3, I don't know, of the non-foil ones. So a little on the finance side, a little on the nostalgia side, for me, as being a legacy player. But as far, Jim, as the non-time shifted cards, the normal cards, you have a card or 2 there that you're happy made the cut.
I wrote down 3 of those cards, and I'm going to attempt to pick 2 of them. One of them is
all 3. What the heck?
Pick all 3. Okay, I'll go ahead and pick all 3. I have here Teferi, Mage of Zalfir, which I love because it's just like wresting complete control of the battle away from your opponent. Like they cannot disrupt you anymore.
Hmm.
I also have Akroma's Memorial, is just like an enormous boost to all of your creatures, and really an enormous boost.
And it seems play in Commander, so that is a good card to include.
And the last one I would say is Gauntlet of Power, which is just like a huge ramp after turn 5, and then just the gates just fly open, which is great for Commander, I think.
And also, it kind of comes off of Gauntlet of Might from the OG Magic set from way back when. So nice little retro flavor win off of that one as well. Not bad choices, Jim. I'm happy about a few of these myself. One of them is a land Gemstone Caverns. It's definitely a very good tournament level card. Sees a lot of play in modern and in I believe in Legacy, I know for sure. And it really was sorely needing a reprint. It had been kind of a forgotten dollar card for a while, and then starting in about 2016, it just started jumping up and up and up. The card is worth somewhere around 50, 55, $60 right now. So definitely financially a much needed reprint there with that one. Also, always nice to see another reprint of Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. That one has been reprinted a few times, but honestly, I think the set would feel like it's missing something if that card weren't included, especially when you consider that they are printing as a time-shifted card Yawgmoth Threatened Position. So you get Yawgmoth alive and Yawgmoth dead, I suppose, with that printing. And then, of course, having another printing of Damnation, the Black Wrath of God. Who's going to complain about that? I mean, unless you're on the receiving end of the card, I guess.
Oh, I'll be complaining a lot about that part, I'm sure.
Now, this the first time Wizards is putting out a remastered block and paper. They've done it a few times on Arena with Amonkhet and Kaladesh. They've done it on MTG Online with Timbus Remastered. I'm going off the top of my head. I'm sure there's one or two others. That stated, Jim, is this something you'd like to see them do again?
I definitely would not mind seeing them do this again. Sure, I would think, like I've said a few times, that I stopped playing Magic for a little while, and I got back into it right around the block that included War of the Spark, which is still one of my favorite things to play with so many.
Technically not a block. They moved away from the block thing, but it was the third set in a row to take place in Ravnik, so it was kind of like a block in spirit. So I'll give you that.
Yeah, let's combine this block and spirit into a remastered set.
There'd be, I mean, a little on the too soon side because they're still easy to find, but maybe a handful of years down the road, Jim, I think that would be an excellent idea, especially with the high proliferation of planeswalkers. Proliferation planeswalk, save that 5 times fast.
No, I pass.
Yeah. I'm surprised I did it the first time, but no, that's actually not a bad idea looking forward. Looking backwards, though, I would love to see them do an Urza's block remastered. I know there's a lot of cards they can't reprint because of the reserved list, but there's a lot of cards they can reprint. I think I would love to see that. Another one that would be fun, especially coming off of Kaldheim, would be, I think, Ice Age remastered, being Ice Age Alliances in Cold Snap, which was inserted into the block well after those original sets came out. But seeing those all married together might be kind of nice as well.
I think so. That's a good point. Like when they went back to Cold Snap, they were like, "Can we reimagine some of the mechanics here?" And it's like, what if they just reinvented the whole block with what they know now?
Right, came out with a very synergistic, or as synergistic as you can get, based on the age difference between the first two and the final set. I think it could be fun. I mean, the nostalgia would be very high on that, if nothing else.
Oh, that's true. And I think they could do a lot more things now with the snow mechanic, which went woefully underused its first time around.
It really did, especially in the follow-up set Alliances. I'm going to say 4, maybe 6 cards total in that entire Alliances set had snow in mind. But Jim, it's the time of the show where we go ahead and talk to a special guest. You ready for this?
I'm not ready for this, but let's go.
Okay, joining us for our interview segment is Dave Howell. Dave is a former Wizards of the Coast employee from way back in the day in the early 1990s. Since then, he has been nominated for a Hugo Award, that's the Science Fiction Awards, and is currently working on a musical retelling of Wizard of Oz. Dave, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, and I'm great, thanks.
I feel just underqualified to talk to you, hearing your resume.
Yeah, I have failed at many, many things. I'm quite accomplished in that way.
Well, we all have to be accomplished at something, I guess, right, Dave? Well, anyway, but no, you are definitely a well-accomplished person with a laundry list of accolades to your credit. But let's talk a little bit about some of those early days. You were there at Wizards of the Coast back when it was the old lighthouse logo. For yes, those of us who remember the early 90s. Anyway, what was it like back in the day there at Wizards of the Coast? I mean, sure, a lot different than it would be today.
Yeah, I mean, it was. What was it like? I mean, that would require I had something useful to compare it to, I suppose. I actually started the company 2 years before Magic came out. Because they're, as many people forget, their first products were role-playing supplements, so I had gotten roped in because Peter, the president of the company, had married someone who was in my class at high school and who had been in my Dungeons and Dragons group. So a few years later, I'm working the IT department of a college, and I get this. I'm not even sure it was email, because I mean, at the time, email was such a rare thing; most people didn't have it.
It was definitely in its infancy back then.
Yeah, because my address was whitman.bitnet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it wasn't even a .com address or edu or anything like that. It was a separate system.
It was an electronic message.
Yeah, so it may have been, but it was probably a phone call, or even maybe a letter. I don't remember, but I do remember that it was a
telegraph. Beep 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 beep.
Well, no, we didn't have those anymore. But anyway, it was. They're like, hey, my friend, you remember Kathy Couch? Sure, I do. Now Kathy Atchison. Her husband and a bunch of his friends are working on this role-playing supplement, and we wanted to send chapters out for people to read and make comments on. Do you want one? I'm like, sure, that sounds like fun. So I did, and then they had another chapter that they still hadn't gotten out. I was the first one back, so they sent me that, and then they got a hold of me and said, hey, they really like your comments. They think you've got something, and some of the other comments along with yours have said that the book is a little dry. It reads a bit like a textbook, and so we were wondering if you'd be willing to take a stab at rewriting it and making it more user-friendly. So the result was I ended up being a co-author of the WOC 0001, the Primal Order. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of roped me into the circle. And so I moved to Seattle. I was living actually on the other side of the state at the time, and was trying to find work, and I've had part-time work as a security guard and stuff. But in the meantime, I would go down there fairly often to help out, look and see what new product had come in, continued doing some typesetting, and ended up writing an expansion of, I think it was chapter 7, was about planes in the Primal Order, and they decided they wanted a whole book on that. And that was the chapter I kind of expanded for them. So I ended up writing one of the supplements, which was introduced at Gen Con 93, along with another product that made people kind of not notice the book, because that was the year we brought Magic out. So it's like, there's this other game that kind of drew everyone's attention.
Bit of a mixed blessing there.
Yeah. Oh, well. But yeah, so, so I would, drop by, I don't know, once or twice a week. And it was Peter and Kathy had rented a large house, and they lived upstairs, and downstairs was where the business was. So, a couple computers and a couch, and, there was the bathroom there, and there was a little kitchen that we could put snacks in. And so it was just kind of casual. People would drop in and out. People would, because there was so little money in the company, sometimes what I was doing was work that was on an hourly basis as a contractor, and sometimes I was doing it just to be nice, because hey, if they stay in business, I get to have more work as a contractor. So it was very casual. People would just sort of drop in and out. So just kind of hanging around. And so one day, Peter's like, so we got this board game that someone sent us that they wanted to try out, which was Robo Rally. We're all like, this is really cool. And then Peter looked into it and said, and it's really expensive to bring out a board game. And since we're not doing board games, I think we got to tell them no.
And Robo Rally had a lot of little parts, I believe, right?
It did, but it's whether it has a lot of little parts or a few little, it doesn't get much cheaper. It's going to run you $80,000 to $100,000 to tool up, to make the boxes, to have it packed. It just doesn't, a simple small game doesn't really get that much cheaper to launch. It gets cheaper to print again, but you still got to test it, and you've got to write the rule book, and you've got to, do all the design and layout. And so there wasn't really aside from what James eventually came up with, there isn't really a good, cheap way to do a board game. So there we are. But then the well-known story of Peter going, well, do you have something that you could play in a line while you're waiting to get in to see a movie or something? And so soon enough, we were playtesting these Magic the Gathering cards that had come out. Now, the interesting thing was, along that way, when Richard first contacted us, he was still a student at UPenn, but he graduated and got a job in my hometown.
A small world.
Of Walla Walla, Washington. Yeah. So I would end up going back and visit my parents, and then I would go visit Richard. And so then I did some play testing there. Years later, I went back and dropped into the book and game store there, and they said, Magic was invented here. I'm like, actually, I know all about Magic, and that's only kind of true.
Like, you're not wrong, but
it was invented here and Seattle and Pennsylvania. So let's but sure, okay. I'll let you claim that. So it was very, very casual. And so it was only after we'd managed to get the whole thing done, he'd hired a bunch of people for the production run, and there's all kinds of stories involving just getting the cards out the door. And then once it had been sent off to Cardamundi in spring, we're like, okay, now we just sit around and wait until months later the cards come back, and everything went back. I was mostly doing my security guard work and occasionally dropping by, and we were keeping tabs on Talislanta and Ars Magica and whatnot, until the day he says they're going to be coming in. We all run down there, and then the truck backs up and drops off these 2 pallets with shrink wrapped boxes, and Magic finally existed.
What was that day like? The day where the cards actually showed up for the very first time, and I mean, was it like holding a new baby?
Well, I don't know. I've never held. I mean, I'd probably not. I would think I would be a lot more nervous about a baby. But yeah, here were these large stacks of brown boxes all wrapped in plastic, and someone grabbed a knife and slashed them open, and Peter popped open the top box and started pulling out starter packs and started handing them around. Everyone, here's your first starter. And because Magic was basically huge for the time. These days, if you go online, you might be able to find a 5 or even an 8 terabyte hard drive. That's as big as they get. At the time, the biggest hard drive you could buy was a 1 gigabyte drive. Most people had 150 megs, something around that. That would be what a typical computer came with. The files for Magic took up 850 megabytes.
Wow.
We had 2 of these 1 gig drives, and most people in the town hadn't even seen them, because that's what it took to hold this thing.
And back then, I was still running 5 1/4 inch floppy disks.
Yeah, you could fit the artwork for 1 Magic card on a floppy. We saved it as JPEG. So we had 3, the stack of floppies. Forget it. So the files were huge, and as a result, when we tried to print out even like black and white things in the laser printer, it would take 2 to 3 hours for 1 page to come out of the laser printer. So we can't wait 5 days to find out what the cards look like. So it was, we kind of had to be very careful about placing the text on the artwork, because we couldn't really check it. We just had to make sure it was all lined up to start with. So we have no idea. We know what it looks like on screen, kind of, sort of. Of course, the screens then weren't nearly the screens we have today, and inkjet printers hadn't really been invented yet either, so you couldn't print out color.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what they looked like. It's like, we kind of sort of guessed, but we didn't really know for sure until the cards came. And so the first thing we wanted to do is open up and find out what they look like. What are they like? And then Christmas. Of course everyone ran inside and said, "Now we gotta play. Let's go." So I flip over and we played for ante because those are the rules. You each flipped over a card, and whoever won the game took both.
I remember playing for ante. Demonic Attorney was my bane.
And I flip over my first card. I'm like, I wonder if that's one of the rares. I don't know because the list is long and I didn't memorize it. But I do know it was a Helm of Chatsuck, so I eventually found out, yep, that was a rare card, and I lost it.
Of course it was.
Of course it was, yeah.
Now the game comes out. You guys get to finally see it. It's selling very well. I know I've heard stories about trying to get new cards and new expansions almost overnight. And while that's going on, you are talking with a book publisher about getting some Magic the Gathering books, not only just made, but distributed and all that with a Harper Prism. Yeah, I mean, you had a finger on that.
To be fair, it did take a little time to take off. In fact, in the spring, before the game came out, we had a mailing list, an email list that we could keep track of people on, and there were other places, and we were getting some feedback going, wait a minute, you say there's like 300 different cards, but when I buy a deck, I only get 60. I buy the game and I only get part of it. What kind of crap is that? What kind of scam are you running? I mean, we had a lot of pushback on that. It's like that sounds like bogus. Well, how much? What? Yeah, it was.
Sounds like baseball cards.
Maybe, but so I mean, some people were excited. We had a decent reputation in the industry for the role playing stuff. They knew that the games we brought out were more innovative than some and reasonably well made. We were not a new company, but not suspicious and weird and Xeroxed and flaky. So there was some reasonable expectation for it. And we had a few cases where Peter gone to a local game store and demoed the playtest cards to get people interested in it. So we had some other people saying, no, actually it's really cool, but it still took a bit of time. I mean, it was doing okay before we got to Gen. It came out about a month before Gen Con, and before that, the sales and the feedback were good enough. We're like, we think that this worked. We're not, we're going to make money on this. Great, that's fantastic. That was the goal, to make money on it.
Pay the bills.
It was at Gen Con when people would come up and buy a deck and they'd go play it, and then their friends would come in and they'd want to, and then and it started snowballing there really fast. And we're like, okay, it looks like we've got a big success on our hands. And even then, big success was like, we're going to have to print more sooner than next year, I guess, maybe. Even then, I remember, I don't know, like maybe a month after Gen Con, someone came in and said, yeah, I was at the local game store and they said they had to order more because someone came in and bought the whole box. I'm like, they bought the entire box of boosters?
Why would they do that?
That's crazy. Wow. Why would anyone do that? Yeah. Still, yeah, it took a while to really get a grasp. And in spring, I think the following spring, I was on my way to Australia partly for Wizards of the Coast. And there was a layover. There was like a 12-hour layover in Los Angeles, and my brother was going to school there at the time, or actually teaching there. And so he picked me up at the airport, and we spent some. He's like, "Well, you say your game's doing really well, but of course, most people, even 9 months later, it was still really a niche product. It was big in the game industry. So it's doing really well, but I don't know. I mean, how it's like? Are you kidding? Where's your local game store? We'll walk in, and all you have to do is say, "Do you have that game?" Just say that and see what happens.
That phrase.
Just, yeah. Do you have that game? They'll know what you mean. So we walk in and we look around, and there is no sign of Magic in the store. Not a hint. And I'm like, go ahead and try it. Well, he chickens out. He goes, so I was wondering if you know anything about this game, this Magic, the card game. And the guy's like, oh my God, we can't keep it in stock. Because this is Pasadena. It's written your Caltech. Okay. So, yeah. No, I was like, see, you totally could have said that game. He would have known what game you meant. So yeah, and we had much the same thing because Peter had looked at the success of the Dungeons and Dragons novels, and he said we should do that too. We've got this great story going on with the Dominaria and I was part of the team that actually had to come up with a name for it. So what are we going to call this place that everyone plays Magic in? Yeah. So he's like, and I'm like, well, if you want authors to write books, we're going to need to talk to them, and the best place to do it would be at the World Science Fiction Convention, which is in 3 weeks. So if you want to do that, we need to move fast.
Might want to get tickets.
In a room. Yeah. So that's how I found myself in San Francisco on Memorial Day of '93, knocking on the door of the Science Fiction Writers Association con suite going, I know I'm not a member, but I was wondering if anyone would want to talk to me. And they're like, someone who wants to pay authors money, come right in, please.
Amazing how that works.
So I started yeah, although it wasn't until the World Fantasy Convention which is always over Halloween weekend, that was where I made the key contact. I'd actually gone to talk to Jody Lynn Nye to see if she would be interested, because we were still looking at doing an anthology at the time. And she was married to a guy named Bill Fawcett, who has written some books, but also does a lot of work kind of putting publishers and authors together and arranging deals. And he came to me and said, you are not doing this the right way. You should be doing novels. I know the right people to do it. I know which publisher needs them, because Harper at the time had just decided to launch a new science fiction line. They didn't have one at the time. That was Harper Prism, being run by John Silbersack. So he's like, John, you need stories to launch to have for your launch day. Dave, you need a publisher. You guys need to talk to each other. And that worked out well. It was funny though, because John's idea was, hey, so, he didn't know anything about the game. He's like, could we do some sort of thing where we could, like, maybe, I don't know, give away a free card with each thing? And we're like, probably, yeah. Okay, what do you, they're like, yeah, so we'll put a little coupon in the back. I'm like, we're not going to need that. You're going to sell plenty of this book without it. The game is popular enough that as long as the book isn't terrible, and that's our job, is to make sure that we can find an author and come up with a storyline. And so our job is to deliver to you a manuscript that meets our standards as well as yours. And we're on that. But once we do that, it'll say Magic the Gathering in the front. We'll sell plenty of copies. It's like, yeah, I'd feel better if we had a card. I'm like, well, okay.
And the first public promos were born.
And 6 months later, well, actually it was longer. I guess it was about a year later. It was by the time we finally got the book written and this whole cycle went through. And John's like, I should have listened to you guys, because he knew that the industry standard rate for people actually tearing the coupon out of the back of a book and sending it in was about 1% or so. They were seeing return rates of higher than 20%. He's like,
I turned mine in.
Wow.
I've got retailers who say that one person comes in and buys every book in the store and walks out, or buys every book in the store, tears the covers off because you had to send the cover back with your coupon so that you couldn't do it, Xerox or print it and request multiple copies. Not that anyone would do that.
No.
So it's like someone walked in, bought like 20 copies of the book, tore all the covers off, and threw the books away and walked out. It's like, I told you didn't need, they actually had to hire 2 extra staff members just to handle the mail, because they were getting 2 to 3 bags of mail a day for people writing in to get those cards.
That's incredible.
Yeah, they sold over 1 million copies of the first book.
And good chunk of that was to get that first promo, I'm sure.
Because here was a card that you couldn't get in the booster pack. The only way to get it was to mail it into card.
Beyond that, and something else I know you've done for the game, you were the cyberspace liaison for Magic the Gathering. How 90s does that sound?
Hey, I made up that term. I invented it.
Well, you made it in the 90s.
Well, yes. Because, like I said, the game itself was such a monster that in order to prepare the files for printing, okay, now we're doing Arabian, the first expansion, Arabian Nights, and we're doing Antiquities, and especially Legends was big. So the computer would spend hours just processing the files to get them ready for printing. It would take 2.5 to 4 hours per quarter of a sheet. So with the regular, when we did revise, that's common, uncommon, and rare sheets, 4 quadrants each, 12 quadrants, 12 times, whatever. It's like, it's a couple of days worth of computer time, but that would tie the machine up. So And we didn't have that many computers. It wasn't like there was one just set aside for me to do production on. So I ended up switching to a night shift. Everyone else used the computer for payroll and for, generating the role-playing games and for keeping track of sales and whatever during the day. And at 5, when they would go home, I would show up, and then I would make the computer spend the whole night going digga 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 as it filled one hard drive full of files to go to the printer. So I'm just sitting there listening to the computer go digga 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 digga. Fortunately, one of Peter's friends was a guy named Ken Case, who had started a company called Omni, who was even at that time known as one of the leading developers, software developers at the time for the Next machine. Eventually, when Next became the Mac OS X, they're still a fantastically well-respected Mac developer. But they were writing for the Next, and because they did that, they loaned Peter a Unix machine. So we had our couple of Macs, and then in the corner was this black, mysterious, ominous pizza box with the big monitor on it. That was the flat Next box, and it had a dial-up permanent connection into the University of Washington that put us on the internet. So we had a live internet connection without having to use a modem in the office. And I'm sitting around going, I've got nothing to do. Guess I'll hang out on the email list and answer questions and stuff. And pretty soon, people start getting Magic and they're writing in, well, how does this card work? What are the rules for this? And so I started answering them. And if I didn't know it, then I would wait until Richard showed up, and then I would ask him, so okay, how does this work? And then he'd be like, ooh, that's a good question. And they go, try and figure it out and come back and tell me, and I'd hand it out. And pretty soon there were a couple of people who were so enthusiastic that I would log on. I'd be like, oh, here's a question. Oh, and here's someone answered it, but they would always answer like, assuming, that's my understanding, but I'm not Dave, so you'd have to check with him. And I'd be like, yep, you got it exactly right.
Thanks for checking.
So eventually I'm like, and the one person in particular, Beth Morrison, was like nailed it every time. She'd always get there before me, and she always had the right answer if it was something that there was an answer to. And so I contacted her and said, you know what? You're beating me to the punch on a regular basis. Why don't I just appoint you as, you can be official, because since you've been right so often, there's no point in saying all the time, but you'd have to check with Dave. My email address was Snark at the time, snark@wizards.com. So it was usually, you'd have to check with Snark to see. It's like, let's just have you stop doing that since you're right anyway. You can. So I said, you get the title of network representative, net rep, and I will be the speaker to net reps. So I'm going to be the cyberspace liaison. And pretty soon I found someone on Usenet that was also an expert, and I appointed them. And pretty soon I started tapping people, and then it was like a quest. It's like, how many different places online can I find someone that can be an expert and can answer questions there? Eventually we had Apple's eWorld, we had CompuServe, the Byte Information Exchange, the Source, AOL. There was someone eventually did a website when the web was invented. So the first web browser, the NCIS Mosaic, came out about the time that Magic did. So the web was a new thing. It was invented about the same time Magic was. There was an FTP site, and I think I'm forgetting at least one or two. But I eventually checked, and Microsoft did not have official representatives on more than half of those. WordPerfect did a pretty good job, but they only had like 3 places. There was no company in the world that had more official representatives online than Wizards of the Coast.
Oh, that's impressive, Dave.
Yeah, that is something I'm very proud of. Like, we were everywhere. Microsoft, eat your heart out. But in part it was because, of course, we had a product that was so fun, so cool, so interesting that people would happily do this work for free. At one point I sat down and said, okay, if we were paying people to do this, it would cost us about $250,000 a year. That's what we weren't spending on it. So eventually I went to the manager and said, these people are doing a ridiculous, 3 or 4 hours a day they're putting in just because they like us. We really ought to do something for them. And so I talked Peter and the other management into basically it worked out to basically $100 a month of company credit that a net rep could spend on stuff, and you'd spend that on basically the retail value. And what that meant was, since we were releasing a game every a new expansion every 2 or 3 months, 3 months kind of what we were shooting for, that you'd have $300 of credit saved up, which was enough to buy a whole box. So basically every rep could buy a box of the new product when it came out. And, I'm like, and of course that we're not paying retail for it. So it was still peanuts for the company, but for them to be the first person on their block to have the new game and to have a whole box full of it was kind of awesome.
Right.
So yeah, it was win-win. It was fantastic.
Now, real quick, you notice in the background that you notice the old tilted T, the old tap symbol. You said that that's kind of your baby.
Because as people who've seen the alpha cards know, it used to say tap 2. It had the word tap and then 2 and then do this.
Mm-hmm.
And there were two kinds of artifacts. There were mono artifacts and poly artifacts.
Right.
Mono artifacts you had to tap when you used them. Poly artifacts you didn't. And we were sitting around trying to figure out if there was a way to simplify that, because there was something else that needed, like we're going to be tapping. Enchantments never tapped. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm like, lands tap. We could, since we've already got a cost to do things of, pay 2 mana. It was, mana, thing. We could just make tapping we could make a symbol for it and put it in there, just part of the cost. And then we can have one kind of artifact. And, if it's got the tap and the cost or not, we're good. And they're like, hey, that works. Great. Okay. So now we need a symbol for it. Let's take a T, put it in a circle and make it crooked. So
sometimes it's just that simple.
Sounds like you were just like flying by the seat of your pants with like how quickly things were moving with this game.
Always. Yeah. Come to work and find, oh, we have a UK office now. What? We do? When did that happen? Kind of a thing. Yeah, it is particularly, the company, it's like we should have a club or organization to handle tournaments and events. And, the right guy was standing around. It's like, hey, you want to do that? Great. You're appointed. Now we have one. Off we go.
Now we have the DCI.
Yeah, it was very much on the fly, make it up as you go, because the demand was, people were hammering on the door going, we want more. And we're like, okay, we're working on it. So yeah, just, no one had ever done a trading card game before. So, I think it's amazing that, sure, it was first, but if it hadn't been as good as it was, the second or third would have swept it away. So I think it's really quite a testament that the very first attempt at this game turns out to be the one that has done the best and lasted the longest. It's kind of cool.
Well, Dave, this is great having you on, but we didn't just bring you on here to talk about old school Wizards of the Coast and the early days of Magic. We brought you here also to play a game we're calling Magic Related, the game where we're asking you Magic related questions, but not necessarily related to Magic the Gathering.
Oh, goody.
All right, Dave, so this time around, we're going to be asking you about the Magic of Disney, Walt Disney Company, the Magic of Disney. Are you ready?
Okay.
All righty. Question number 1. I have it right here on the sheet that keeps on keying out here. Question number 1. Wayne Allwine, who voiced Mickey Mouse from 1983 until his death in 2009, had a special relationship with Russi Taylor, who voiced Minnie Mouse from 1986 until her death in 2019. What was it? Was it A, after meeting in a hallway before a 1998 TV special, the two became married? B, Taylor was Allwine's high school sweetheart, lost contact with her until the late 1980s when Taylor got the Minnie Mouse role? Or C, they're actually brother and sister in real life, with Russi taking the name Taylor after marrying Tim the Toolman Taylor?
I was going to say all three of these sound very plausible, but thankfully one of them just became less plausible.
Just a smidge.
Let's go with Met in the Hallway.
Go with Med in the Hallway?
Yeah.
Well, good news. You got a point for that one. They were actually married for almost 20 years after that, actually, up until Wayne Allwine's death in 2009. So good job on that there, Dave. Question number 2. Dumbo, the amazing flying elephant, almost made it onto the cover of a Big Time magazine. Which one? A, Sports Illustrated nearly featured Dumbo playing baseball in a 1996 issue after the Walt Disney Company bought a controlling stake in the Anaheim Angels, but they went with Donald Duck and Goofy instead. B, Time Magazine in 1941, where they were going to name him Mammal of the Year. Or C, EnQuest Magazine nearly featured Dumbo as a Magic the Gathering card for their April 1998 issue as an April Fool's joke.
Let's go with C.
You can go with EnQuest Magazine. Are you sure you want to go with that one?
Not anymore.
You're leading the witness.
Hey, that's part of the game. I've seen the original. I mean, you're good because that seems so plausible. Lord knows there were lots of people in the early days of Magic who got into publishing without really knowing what copyright law looked like.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the many things I got to spend time doing in between cranking out cards. So let's go with Sports Illustrated.
You go with Sports Illustrated. It was actually Time Magazine. The issue was supposed to come out in December 1941, and something else happened in December 1941 that kind of shifted everybody's attention. That would be
Mammal of the Year.
That'd be Pearl Harbor, actually. Happened.
Wow. Okay.
Does Time Magazine actually have a Mammal of the Year?
They were doing it instead of Person of the Year that year.
Okay, I was wondering what the other mammals might have been in other years.
Yeah, I didn't think they had that kind of sense of humor back then.
Well,
Okay.
at least one time they did. It was one last question for you here. You get this one right, you'll have won 2 of 3, and that'll give you a free internet point there, Dave.
Okay.
Child actor Donnie Dunnigan, who voiced young Bambi in 1942, had quite the career change when he grew up. What was it? A, after growing up as the voice of young Bambi, Dunnigan attended UC Davis, got a degree in zoology, and became a zookeeper at the San Diego Zoo. B, he joined the military and enjoyed a 25-year career with the U.S. Marines, spending some of that time as a drill instructor. Or C, he went to culinary school and later opened a restaurant that specializes in venison, rabbit, and skunk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are so many people that have done so many voices for Disney that it seems unlikely you'd pick this out as a question and answer if he just went and became a drill instructor. So I'm going to cross B off the list.
Okay.
Let's try C.
You're going with C. He decided to cook Bambi instead of be Bambi.
Now, see, you asked me that, and now I'm having second thoughts again.
It's what I do, Dave. It's what I do.
Yeah, what was A?
A is he attended UC Davis and became a zoologist.
Right, zoologist. So did he study Bambi or did he eat Bambi? All right, let's go with A.
You can go with A, the zoologist. Actually, he did join the military and he was a drill instructor. He kept quiet about the Bambi thing during his military career, but opened up about it after he retired from the armed forces. Dave Howell, former Wizard of the Coast employee from the early days of Magic the Gathering, currently working on a new musical stage adaptation of Wizard of Oz. Pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for the wonderful stories. And you know what? We're going to give you that internet point anyway.
Okay, well, I know just where to put it.
Well, Jim, that was fun, but let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about current right now Magic. We have Strixhaven about to come out here fairly soon, about a month or so. Strixhaven, kind of the Harry Potter Hogwarts theme set, different schools of magic, dual colored schools of magic. What are your initial thoughts on this set as we are about to learn more about it?
I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily a Harry Potter theme. It could be any other sort of magical school, I guess. Who am I kidding? Yeah, who am I kidding? This is the most Harry Potter thing I can imagine. But I think the theming is actually really interesting, going from like Kaldheim, which is just like really classical, old Viking sort of thing, to something that I think is a lot more contemporary. Mm-hmm. Especially like not just Harry Potter, but there's like other things like, I don't know, My Hero Academia, other ideas of like go to the school and learn this magical thing. That's sort of like a big thing now.
It's quite the sea change, to use a Shakespearean term.
Oh yeah, very much so. But I think it's a good one. I like having totally different focuses from one set to the next.
And one of the things they're doing this time around, I mean, it's not like it's new, but the way they're doing it's a little different. You have these alternate card frames of existing cards. I mean, call me crazy. I think these things look really good.
They look incredible. These are like some of the most beautiful cards I've ever seen. It's like a stained glass window, except much, much better. They're fantastic.
And then we have these Japanese ones. I know I sound like I'm just gloating about this set, almost like I'm trying to promote it, but these Japanese promos are equally outstanding. And it both has me excited for the set, but also a little worried that they're putting so much pop into the set because maybe they're concerned there's something about it that's not quite there, you know?
I had not even thought about that. I just sort of thought, like, why not put everything you can into every set was maybe my thought. I don't know.
It could be that too. Maybe it's just Hasbro saying, you know what, let's just give them everything, every set, and they'll buy packs. You know, they'll buy boxes, and it could be just that simple. But do you have, Jim, any early hopes for this set? Some sort of things or themes or what have you that you're hoping you will see?
I'm hoping. I don't know. I'm hoping that they take this like inspiration that they've gotten, try to do some like really wild things with it mechanically. Like, see how far away they can tread from like normal, like Magic flavor, normal Magic mechanics. I want to see them like go just to the limits of imagination here, as long as not the limits of like card art going on.
Right, and I do know that with these two colored pairs, they are taking them in a route different than you would see in, like, say, Ravnica. So I'm hoping that fires off well, and I definitely think it'll add a little more diversity to the colored pairs and whatnot. So you don't see a red-white deck and go, oh, it's Boros, creatures, and combat. It'll be something else possibly. So I'm hoping that fires off well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's harder to say like lots of creatures, lots of combat when we're talking about a magical school. Probably sort of have to change tack.
Well, you do have defense against the dark arts you have to worry about.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I mean, okay, yeah, you got me there.
Yeah, well, we're going to start to see in just under a week what some of these cards are going to be. I know a few of them when they first announced the set have come to light, but we're going to start seeing spoiler season here beginning on Thursday, March 25th. We're going to have the set coming out on Arena on the 15th of April, physical card pre-release starting on the 16th, and then the set comes out April 23rd. So we'll definitely have all the answers, at least you would hope, by then.
Hope so. Is that kind of like a quicker schedule than you might expect?
There are a lot of releases this year.
There really are. Caltime was only like a month. Caltime was only like a month or so ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it still feels like a brand new release, and we have Time Spiral Remastered came out today, and in about a month we're going to have another set. They're coming fast and furious, my friend, fast and furious. And you know something I'm a little furious about, to change gears, segue, is a little bit of our winners and losers. We're talking about the three biggest winners and losers in terms of MTG finance over the past week. And I'm not too happy with what I'm seeing, because I'm seeing some big spikes, Jim, especially here on the winners. For example, your number 3 card here, Ashnod's Transmagnet, a fairly worthless artifact from Antiquities, went from $19.99 up almost 700% to $158. Quite the spike. The number 2 card, a bigger percentage gain, but not nearly as high money-wise as Auspicious Ancestors, reserve list card from Mirage, going from $4 to $39.50. That's about an 892% gain. And then our #1 gaining card over the past week, Rasputin Dreamweaver, a reserve list card from Legends, going from a collectible $315 up 5,034% to $16,169. This thing is the price of a Nissan Versa. And one thing about Dreamweaver and the Tragmagnet is these do not appear to be natural gains, Jim. It looks like we have buyouts affecting the organic pricing, and that's why I'm a little furious about this.
Yeah, that is the most absurd price spike I think I've ever seen for a card. It's like $16,000 for one card. How's that? That can't be.
It's not. I guarantee you, those are not real prices. Those are fantasy prices that, unfortunately, somebody or some parties have manipulated to GameStop the heck out of those cards. So they'll expect those to come crashing down any second now.
So they're like the NFTs of Magic cards.
Yes, pretty much stonks. Anyway, our three biggest losers, we have Alesha, Who Smiles at Death, the Time Spiral Remastered version. That would be the time shifted version. It's dropped down from $4.50 to $2, lost about half its value. Same thing with Flicker Wisp. Again, the Time Spiral Remastered time shifted version, dropping from $8 to $3.30. That's a drop of about almost 59%. And then the non-reserve list Legends card, Ramirez de Pierto, dropped from $25 to $10. Much more modest on the drops. That one was 60%. This feels organic. This is just supply, demand. New cards are coming, the new set's coming out, so you're anticipating a higher volume of cards being available in as far as those Time Spiral Remastered cards are. As for Ramiro de Pierto, the Legends card, I don't know, maybe just fell out of favor. Maybe there's an article written. Maybe there was not an article written somewhere else. I don't know, but it feels fine to me.
Yeah, I think we saw something similar to this when Call Time was coming out. They picked out some of those cards, and their values fell as well.
We did. We definitely did, and a few of them continued to fall well after the set's release. So that's probably, I think, what we're seeing.
That's probably true. I'm disappointed that Ramirez de Pietro is falling in value, because that is one of the greatest card names I've ever seen. And just on the strength of that alone, it should be much more valuable than $10.
You would think, and I mean the art on that card is just it's so Captain Jack Sparrow like. I love it. But at the same time, it's a 4/3 first striker for 2 black, a blue, and 3. It's not exactly playable. Nor is it really all that desirable as a legend to begin with. So there you have it. And as far as the podcast goes, there you have it, Jim. That's about all we have to talk about this month for the Magic Untapped podcast. If you like this, please go ahead and make sure you subscribe to the podcast here on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to Jim, where do you listen to your podcasts?
Where do I listen to my podcast? Well, I definitely listen to a lot of podcasts, and I definitely listen to them mostly on iTunes, I would say. On
iTunes. Yeah, I'm an iTunes guy too. So friends and fans, go ahead and subscribe, give us a rating. That way, people know that they like us or don't like us. That's fine. I'm okay with, no, I'm kidding. No, I'm good. Okay. I'm not going to Andy Kaufman that one up. Anyways, it's been fun. Great having Dave Howell on, and Jim, thank you for being on this episode with me yet again.
No, thanks for having me on. It was a great episode to be on, I think.
I think so too. Deuces.
Hey, take care.